Well, hello everybody. If you were with us last time, you heard us discuss anger and the negative effects of anger on the human body, but also emotional repercussions and what it means to God and how God deals with anger. And so you may be asking, and before we get into today's topic, which is different, we thought we'd address a question that came up, which is, well, didn't God get angry throughout the Bible? And didn't Jesus also get angry? And what about that? Is that the same kind of anger you guys were talking about last time? So if you would just address that before we go.
Well, we do know that man's anger does not achieve the righteousness of God. Right? So God is angry with a righteous kind of anger, a righteous indignation. So when God is angry, it comes out of his justice or his righteousness. If something isn't right, it's wrong. Mm-hmm. So God made us in his image to become angry. We become angry because God himself gets angry at injustice.
I see. Yeah. I see. And are there examples where Jesus was angry and did something good with it?
Well, the two primary examples in the New Testament are Jesus when he's in a situation in a synagogue with a man who had a withered hand. Now, he could have been a worker who lost his hand and couldn't work with it, and Jesus wanted to heal the man.
Right.
But it happened to be on the Sabbath.
Right.
So the Pharisees sat in judgment on him and on the man for even standing up when Jesus said stand up. And Jesus became very angry at them for their insistence on keeping the law, but to neglect this man's well-being.
Right.
Another one was where Jesus came into Jerusalem and the Pharisees were selling defective animals and shortchanging the people.
Oh, wow.
And they became angry at them fleecing the people.
I see.
So he began to clean out the temple. He became very angry.
Yeah, he turned over a couple of tables.
He did.
Yeah.
And whipped.
Sure.
Took his whips and drove him out.
But he cleaned the house.
Cleaned house.
This is my father's house, he said. Very good, very good. Well, I appreciate that. So,
Sure.
The next thing we wanted to talk about is peaceful sleep. And there's a beautiful example of that in the Bible as well. So let's dig into that right now.
Okay, great. Jesus had been teaching all day long, and so he had become pretty exhausted, and it's a pretty taxing thing to be with people all day teaching them. And the day when the evening came, he said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side. So, Jesus is calling his disciples to follow him. They've been with him all day long. Jesus has been teaching and healing. And now Jesus is pretty whooped. He's exhausted. And leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. So apparently, these were masters of the sea. These were fishermen. They were very comfortable at the sea. And finally, they get to leave the masses behind and be alone with Jesus. Jesus is in the boat. This is like intimate fellowship. They're looking forward to a nice evening cruise with Jesus. Well, there were other boats along with them, and a furious squall came up. A furious storm.
That doesn't sound good.
The fishermen learned to expect the unexpected, but this was more than they bargained for, because this was a storm beyond their imagination. These were very high waves that began crashing over the boat, and very strong winds, such that it was sort of like hurricane force, and they were completely frightened.
Wow.
Now I know that something about there's a rhythm to life where the sun comes up, the sun goes down, we work during the hours of the day, and then the night comes when we're supposed to rest. There's sort of the serotonin melatonin relationship.
Exactly.
And so Jesus, it's nighttime.
Right.
They're at the helm of the boat. He kind of crawls in the back of the boat under a ballast bag and lays his head down and falls fast asleep. He's trusting in his Father to carry him to the other side. But the disciples awakened Jesus from his sleep and said, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?"
Huh.
They were completely stressed out.
What a bad question.
Well,
it's almost an insult.
The disciples had been cared for by Jesus.
Right.
So many times he had proven to them that he cared about them.
Right.
When they were hungry, he made sure they had something to eat.
Right.
When they were sick, he made sure that someone was made well.
Right.
When someone was possessed by a demon, he had the power to cast the demon out.
Right.
But now when they're being tested, they believe he doesn't care about them.
Short memory.
They really questioned whether he cared about them. And so Jesus got up and he rebuked the wind. And he said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." And the wind died down and it was completely calm. Now we know that, when the winds stopped blowing so fiercely, that the waves still continued to churn.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, when Jesus rebuked the waves and spoke to the wind, it became completely calm.
Mm.
Jesus is showing that he's the master of all things here.
Right.
But there's something he wanted to ask them. So he said to the disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Why is it that you still have no faith?" So what happened to them was that in the midst of the storm, and sometimes there's a storm on the outside,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also a storm on the inside.
On the inside, that's right.
And the bigger storm was on the inside. And the storm was revealing something about our enemy, that he's out to destroy us,
Right.
but also about our God, that he's greater than the storms we face. We can trust him in the storms. And Jesus said to them, "Why are you afraid? Why do you have no faith?" And they were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this?" That even the wind and the waves obey him. Jesus was able to sleep in the storm because he was trusting in his Father's care. But they didn't know him well enough to be able to trust him.
Right.
They completely freaked out in the storm. So tell me about sleep and why is sleep so beneficial?
Well, rest and repair go hand in hand. We can't rest if we're scared and worried and stressed and moving around, and certainly certain activities cause breakdown in the body, and other things allow it to repair, regenerate, restore. You need to replenish certain things in your body. You mentioned two hormones, melatonin and serotonin. Certainly those need to be replenished. We have other things, neurotransmitters. Serotonin is actually a neurotransmitter also, and so is dopamine, which allows us to experience pleasure. Then there are things that have to rebuild. Like if we exercise during the day, we actually break down muscle tissue. So that needs to repair and rebuild, and hopefully it rebuilds larger and stronger. So to do that, we need to rest. We need to allow for rest. There are other hormones like testosterone, growth hormone, that need to be replenished. One of the things we know is when someone goes to the gym and exercises and does heavy weightlifting, their testosterone levels initially go up, but then they dip and drop. So does growth hormone. Growth hormone drops, and then it goes below the normal levels over the next 24 hours. Then it takes another 24 hours for it to come back up, where there are actually sleep techniques you can use to increase your growth hormone levels. So we can certainly talk about that. Here's the problem. A lot of people we know, based on your field, Pastor R, my field as a doctor, there are a lot of people who are going through storms. And they're having trouble sleeping, and some of you may be going through that, where there's a storm, and in that storm you can't sleep, and you probably ask, how do you expect me to sleep when everything's falling apart around me, when these waves are crashing in, when the winds are blowing, when the sky is dark and there's no hope around? You expect me to sleep? Yes, you have to, because you're not going to recover. The sailors, in sailing, there's a law, there's a rule that says never turn off the engine in a storm.
It's true.
Because the waves will take you.
Yes.
You have to keep moving. And if you stop moving, you stay in the storm, but you move through that storm and come out on the other side. Part of that is being able to sleep.
Yes.
So what do you think? Are there examples in your pastoral work where you see people having trouble sleeping, and are there stories of that you can think of?
Well, I was talking to my son Josh last night. He's living in Chicago, right underneath the L train. Actually, sometimes Daddy says, if you're outside and the L train is passing by, it's debilitating.
I believe it. I believe it.
It's so loud and so noisy that you can't even think. But he says, though the train passes over top of his apartment, he sleeps like a baby.
Wow.
I said, Josh, why is that? He says, Dad, I am flat out exhausted.
That's great.
I'm dealing with the financial markets all day long, doing analysis.
Wow.
But I'm able to sleep at
Yeah.
night, just sleep very good. The sleep of the innocent.
Right.
Because he's done a hard day's labor. I think what happens to us is we begin to internalize things that we hold on to versus we release. So I think we really do need to be able to pray and release to God the things we can't control,
Yes.
so we can sleep at night and
Yeah.
put into His hands things He's in control of.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course, that makes perfect sense. And then I've always said, a while back, my dad asked me. He said, "Why are you working so hard?"
Yeah.
And I said, "You know what, Dad? When I go home after a long, hard day of work, my dinner tastes better.
Yes.
The couch feels better. Doesn't matter what's on TV because I'm dozing off. My bed is much more comfortable when I'm exhausted, and my pillow feels good under my head. I mean, everything's better when I'm exhausted. So certainly hard work, like Josh, really working hard is good for us and allows us to sleep better and rest more."
Well, I've heard about you too, Dr. Amir, that sometimes you'll fall asleep on the floor with the two dogs on either side.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Nothing better than cuddle up with dogs. Yeah, so they serve their purpose. Sleep has stages.
Yeah.
So there are times where someone will sleep and they'll wake up and they don't feel rested.
Mm.
It's because they didn't go deep enough into that sleep.
Mm.
So we have REM sleep, rapid eye movement. Then there's brain waves, and there's alpha and beta and theta, and there's one other that I can't think of. But the deeper we go into sleep, the more beneficial that sleep is. The more repair takes place. The more brain repair, hormone repair, neurotransmitter repair, muscle, joint, tissue repair. All of that happens more when we're in deeper sleep. Sleep has 90-minute cycles.
Yeah.
So you want to hit REM sleep every 90 minutes, and you want to stay asleep in 90-minute increments. So, for example, if you're going to sleep at night, they say 7 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
Well, 7.5 hours is 5 REM cycles.
Yes.
Right? So that's where the number 8 came from. And some people say, oh, you should sleep 9 hours because then you get 6 REM cycles. I think there is such a thing as too much sleep. One may be that actually your carbon dioxide levels can increase too much if you sleep too much. Some people who sleep too many hours are actually more tired also.
Yeah.
So personally, I think that 7 to 8 hours is probably the ideal. Personally, I wish I could sleep more, but I only sleep about 6 hours a night. So I try to make sure I sleep 6 hours and 15 minutes. So that gives me the 4 cycles of 90 minutes to go through, and I'm pretty rested in the morning, and I'm very active when I first wake up, exercise, and so on. However, if you can't reach that REM sleep, if you're not going deep enough, that's the restless sleep. That's the sleep that gets interrupted a lot. That's the sleep that you wake up out of and you go, I didn't really rest. I don't feel like I slept. A lot of things can affect our sleep.
Yeah. At the REM level of sleep, we get a dream at that level.
Yes.
So we're so relaxed that now our mind is able to.
Yes. Now a lot of experts say if you remember your dream, that means your REM sleep got interrupted. So we dream every night, which is, now I'm not an expert on sleep, but the experts say we dream every night, but we don't remember our dreams every night, because most nights when you go through a full REM cycle, at the end of the 90 minutes you forget what that dream was, but you do dream every night. So nightmares are different if they wake you up, because they throw you into that fight or flight response. That's why most people wake up in a nightmare. But good dreams we don't wake up in, and we don't really remember them. And so hopefully everyone's dreaming sweet dreams and so on. But you mentioned serotonin, melatonin.
Yeah.
Did you know melatonin is actually produced by the body? It's produced by our skin. Now a lot of people know that the skin produces vitamin D when you're in the sun. But what they don't know is that the same skin that produces vitamin D when exposed to the sun produces melatonin when you're in darkness sleeping. So it's important that we sleep in darkness. That's why most people sleep at night. So some of you may be working shift work where you actually work at night. You sleep during the day. Your room needs to be pitch pitch black dark. You need to seal the windows, make sure there's no light coming in. You need to trick your body into believing it's nighttime. Otherwise, you don't produce the melatonin. Your serotonin levels will fluctuate, and you will go into a deep depression. The type of depression that can actually lead to suicidal thoughts, and it's clinically been proven. In fact, I had a patient who, great lady, had everything going for her, and she attempted suicide because she worked at night, and they had just built a brand new house, and this house had a skylight over the master bed in the bedroom. And so they like to sleep and count the stars, but when she worked at nights and she'd sleep during the day, she slept in the same bed. And her face was under the window, the skylight that had the sun rays coming in, and she couldn't produce melatonin. And 6 months after that, and everyone's wondering, why is she depressed? They have a great family, she has a great job, they make great money, they just built this amazing mansion that they live in. Why are you depressed? And she couldn't answer it. Well, then we figured out it was because she wasn't sleeping in darkness. So serotonin levels were down. So we had her, if she slept during the day, we had her sleep in the guest room, sealed the windows, darkness, and 6 months of that, she was out of the depression.
I was finding, Dr. Amir, that I was able to sleep in the winter longer than in the summer. Mm-hmm. In the summer, I would wake up about 5, but in the winter, maybe about 6:30. And I then discovered that our shades were letting light into the room.
Yes.
And I said to my wife, Debbie, we need some room darkening shades.
Yes.
And when I got those room darkening shades, now I have to set my alarm in the summertime to wake up early.
Yeah.
Because I sleep so much better with the darkness.
Exactly.
Versus the little bit of light that comes in.
Exactly.
And awakens me.
Yeah.
Gets me going. I see light.
And you actually, sleep, you can think of sleep as a vitamin. You can think of it as nutrition because your body produces those great things. Another thing that cycles besides growth hormone is your cortisol levels. Cortisol level is deemed the stress hormone. It actually is an anti-inflammatory hormone. It's actually a hormone that helps your immune system and so on. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's really high first thing in the morning. And it needs to go all the way down to near zero at night when you fall asleep. If it doesn't go down, you can't sleep. That's why people who are stressed, worried, angry, nervous, they're thinking about that storm they're in all the time.
Yes.
They're the ones that they get a spike of cortisol in the evening. Now they can't fall asleep. Those are the ones we call wired and tired. We talked about that, I believe, last time. So if those are wired and tired, they're exhausted and they can't sleep. They're the ones who say, I'm too tired to fall asleep.
I refuse to watch anything that stresses me out, any movie, because I get enough stress in my life, Dr. Amir. I don't need to kind of inject that into my life late at night.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Of all the people in history, who had more to worry about than Jesus? Who had the mission that was on him, knowing he was going to the cross? And there is an instant where he's actually crying and begging that God would take this cup from him, right? Tremendous stress. Now, he knew that. He knew what he was here for, what stood in front of him, what he had to accomplish, what he had to do, and yet he's able to sleep. There's no excuse for any of the rest of us to not be able to sleep.
One of the stories that parallels the story of Jesus in the boat sleeping is the story of Jesus at Gethsemane, when he says to his disciples, couldn't you stay awake for 1 hour?
Yeah.
Pray with me.
Right.
The time he really needed their presence and their prayers.
Right.
And they fell asleep.
Yeah.
They were their eyes became heavy and they fell asleep.
Yeah. Well, they weren't worried about that storm.
No.
That storm was coming for Jesus, and they're like, it's not mine. I can sleep just fine. Yeah, it's a shame.
I know, Dr. Amir, also that you advocate getting a little rest in the day, a little sleep in the day.
For sure.
And kind of slip away from patients about 2 o'clock and get like a little nap.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that. Why is that important?
Certainly. The research says 4 p.m. 4 p.m. a 10-minute nap increases growth hormone levels, which is fantastic. Because growth hormone is what keeps you young, prevents wrinkles, builds muscle, repairs damaged tissues. Growth hormone is what all the professional athletes illegally inject if they want to recover faster from their sports and athletic events. So a 4 p.m. 10-minute nap causes a growth hormone spike. Now, I'm working at 4 p.m., so mine is at 2 p.m., and so yours can be at noon or whenever your lunch hour is, but definitely it's a great idea. They used to call it a beauty rest in the old days. The reason they called it a beauty rest was everyone who did it stayed young and healthy. Well, who wouldn't want that? We all want to be young and healthy.
A siesta, beauty rest, it all sounds good.
Exactly. Now, why is it only 10 minutes? Well, because in 10 minutes you can't go into REM sleep. It's not long enough. Now, within 20 minutes, if you're peacefully resting, you can fall into REM sleep. If you're in a deep sleep and then your alarm goes off, you interrupt that REM sleep, you will get a cortisol spike. The cortisol, remember, cortisol needs to be at 0 at night. So it needs to be high in the morning, first thing when you wake up. So if it's dropping down and then around 2 p.m. you take that nap, you go into REM sleep and you interrupt it, you get a spike of cortisol. Now it needs more time to go down to 0, so you won't be able to sleep properly, or if you do, it won't be a restful sleep.
Yes.
So you don't want to go into REM sleep. To be safe, it's 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes, 12, 15 max. You sleep too long, you go into REM sleep, you interrupt that. If you do a full 90-minute sleep in the afternoon, though, now your body's going to be rested, so you didn't interrupt REM sleep, so it's not as unhealthy. But again, you slept, your body thinks you slept, and it's not going to want to sleep at night.
Yes.
So the best thing to do is that 10-minute nap.
Okay. 10 or 90.
10 or 90, but even the 10 is better than 90 in the afternoon.
So Jesus, it seems from the story, was trying to get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
But maybe he only got his 10-minute nap because the disciples woke him up.
Exactly.
They were afraid they're going to perish.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Well, hopefully he used some of his superpowers and replenished his body that way. Jesus never got sick, did he?
No. Great immune system.
Yeah. No illness whatsoever. So he definitely knew how to take care of himself.
Yes.
Because he was all man and all God at the same time. So the man part, he was human like us. I mean, they had the same. That's why he could feel pain.
Yes.
That's why he could be killed on the cross. So not really very different than any other human being, but he was able to stay healthy. A lot of that is because he practiced the right things.
So Jesus practiced getting some rest at night and sleeping like a baby. So we should not feel guilty about getting our rest at night and sleeping like a baby.
Yes, exactly. So my advice is, you going through a storm, the storm will be there in the morning. Do your best to get it out of your mind and sleep. And don't, like you mentioned, don't watch the news at night before bed. I mean, there's no good news that's on TV. No one talks about all the great things that are happening.
Well, the good news of his is much better than the bad news of this world.
There you go. This is the ultimate good news.
He cares about us.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now you can trick your body with a technique. We talked about in one of the previous videos on breathing and how when we are stressed we tend to inhale. Something bad just happened, and when we realize it's not dangerous or we're in a good place, then we may breathe a sigh of relief, right? Now, exhale needs to be twice as long as inhale in a normal rhythm. When our bodies are stressed, that rhythm becomes 1-to-1. Inhale and exhale become 1-to-1 ratio, as opposed to. Now, if you're having trouble falling asleep, because you've got this train of thoughts that's in a circular pattern going through your brain, the same thoughts over and over and over, like watching a bad movie over and over without being able to hit pause or stop, just keep reliving a bad memory or a bad thought. Then, if you do this breathing exercise, your body will shift from fight or flight into rest and repair, and then your mind will calm down and sleep. But you got to do it exactly as I tell you. So as you breathe in, you have to count to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Start exhaling as slow as you can and to 14. 1, 2, 3, 14, right? It has to be twice as long, and you do 10 of those breaths. My guess is before you hit the 10th breath, you'll be asleep, and you won't remember doing the 10th one. So that's your tip for turning your body into that parasympathetic state where you can actually rest and repair. This is a good thing to do every night if you're going through a big storm. And obviously, what else should they do?
Well, God intends for us to have an abundant life, to live life to the fullest.
Yes, sir.
Jesus came to give us life and a
Yes.
more abundant life. And part of this abundant life is the Lord blesses us with sleep. He really wants us to enjoy the rest and have a productive life. And the next time we want to talk about what does it feel like to have an abundant life?
Yes.
What does that abundance really mean to us?
That's beautiful. Specifically, I want you to tell them
Yes.
what God meant when He said, I came so you would have life
Yes.
and have it in abundance. How great is that? Let's learn about that next time.
Okay, that's
All
good.
right. Thank you.